Yeah, I'm going to try to talk to Brian right now. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to welcome to the podium the Green Party candidate for governor, Mr. Ian Schlakman.
How's everyone doing? Does this work?
No, not to amplify, but for the...
Whatever, I'll leave it here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, want to make sure. Today I got a very serious alert on my phone. Did anyone else get an alert on their phone earlier today? No one else? I got an alert about poor air quality in the middle of Baltimore City. Maybe it's because of my zip code. I do live right in the middle of downtown. Air quality today in Baltimore was so bad, seniors and children could not be outside. It's summertime. Where else are they supposed to go? And for those of you like me that do a lot of advocacy work in the public housing units, you know that they're currently in the middle of a fight to keep their air conditioners. As the public housing system is trying to take their air conditioning system away right here in Baltimore City.
Yes.
Now, I also want to make sure that people understand something. Gentrification is directly tied with our transit choices. Does everyone here understand that? It's unbelievably important that we get that through. Mayor Blake had a plan, and her plan was very open. She wanted to gentrify the middle of the city. She wanted to attract folks from DC who are wealthy into our city of Baltimore and kick out all the poor people. Mayor Pugh has another plan, and that's kick out all the poor people wherever they are in the city. Doesn't matter if they're in the center or anywhere.
That's right.
It's horrible. It's time that we confronted head on these failed policies. I'm a businessman. I'm also a socialist, because I have enough sense to know that there will not be anywhere for me to conduct business if we continue to pollute our planet the way that we are going down this path. We need, and if we, Reverend Chambers and I, were in office tomorrow, we would make sure to make free public transportation in the Baltimore City area. Not just because it's the right thing to do for poor people in the city, but also because it would drive ridership up, just like we see in Paris, France. When they get their smog alerts, they knew they had to do something, and they made all public transportation free to drive up ridership, and they started shutting down lanes of traffic. Now, if I do that, I might get, rocks thrown at me on the street. But we are definitely going to work on making sure public transportation is free. Not just in the white L of Baltimore City going up to Towson, but in the black butterfly of Baltimore City as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotta mention this because someone said to me earlier today. Baltimore City at one point in time had a robust streetcar system. The envy in the nation up until the 1960s. It ran all the way up here to Towson, all the way into the inner city, and all the way around. Democratic Governor Schaefer got rid of it, put the nail in the coffin of that system, and opted instead for a light rail system. One of the most racist systems in the country. So racist, in fact, that he could not pay for it with federal funds. He had to pay for it with state funds, because the federal government said it's a civil rights violation to just take one mega light rail train and run it through the white part of the city, never touching the black butterfly on the sides. This is the kind of thing that we have to fight against. This is the kind of thing that we have to step up our game as experts, as transportation nerds, as those who want to see a more integrated and equitable Baltimore City, going right into the counties. Because I can tell you right now, when you go to apply for public housing in Baltimore City, the first thing they tell you to do is to go into the county. Because they don't have any more public housing in the city. So this is not just a problem that affects residents in the Baltimore City corridor, it affects all of us. That's why I am completely for a regional transit authority. I am with a lockbox, so no future governor can mess this up, no matter who it is. No offense to my Democratic friends. And on top of that, I also want to say that I am for repealing the, I'm going to get this messed up, people are going to make fun of me, the box fare tax.
Fare
box tax, thank you. I see I knew you voted right. The fare box tax, which we have to get rid of, because we see that things like the free circulator bus are gaining in momentum. They are gaining in ridership. Don't let them tell you that they're not. In fact, in the Baltimore City meetings, they were considering shutting down part of the circulator, and I asked them why, and it was because it was doing too well and becoming too costly. You do too well on public transportation and you get shut down in this region. That's ridiculous. We've got to redo the way we think about this. We've got to undo that tax right there. And so, I really want to make sure people understand that we've got to put forward a new agenda when it comes to transit in this region. And it's got to encompass racial equity. It's got to encompass the needs of the poor community and the disabled community. It has to encompass all of us, and it cannot just be about what we've done over and over and over again, Democrat or Republican, increasing fares, trying to get more people that are wealthy into the area. The time for that is over. We've got to have a new approach on how we look towards things. So no matter who you're voting for in November, I leave you with this message. You must hold them accountable. Just like you did here today, we should have had Governor Hogan here as well. I'm sure you reached out to him when you didn't respond. We'll take this message, we'll be right there with you when you take this message to him in his mansion, because this needs to be said. This stuff must be held accountable. The decisions we make when it comes to transportation have generational effects, not just when it comes to our environment, but also when it comes to racial equity and gentrification in this area. And I don't know about you, but I cannot afford the rents in Baltimore City anymore. And I certainly can't afford the rents in Baltimore County. I'm sorry for all of you others in Baltimore County. So we've got to do better than this. We've got to come up with a comprehensive plan. That's what we're proposing here in the Green Party. That's why we're running for governor today. With that, I'll take any questions.
Stop being complacent and come out to only meetings like this, but come out to the MTA meetings. Because the Baltimore link was advertised October 2015 until June 2017, and 4,000 to 6,000 people spoke out. But supposedly there's 250,000 bus riders a week. Where was everybody at?
They couldn't get there on the bus.
The point is, whether they can get there on the bus or not, where were they at? Because MTA did put the information out in brochures. They had, wait, let me finish. They put it out in brochures. They put it out on the trains, an audible message. They put it out in the stations and the buses on an audible message. What I call the Baltimore mentality means is that Baltimore has a tendency to stand back and wait until something sinks like the Titanic. And then they want to put on a life vest. It's too late. The people have to start coming out to more than just meetings like this. There's nothing wrong with these meetings, but this is what I see. And the MTA wants people to come out so they get their opinions on route changes and service changes. And getting people to come to those meetings is such a hard problem because people think that none of the MTA folks take public transit. I know a lot of them from going to those meetings, and that's not true. They don't think the MTA cares, but they want the people to come out. But Baltimore wants to do the same thing it did when the Red Line got canceled. It waited for the politicians to do something. The politicians went to their corner along with the citizens of Baltimore, but the people in the PG Montgomery County area stood up. They sent a letter to the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Lane Child, because I saw the letter, because I'm on the Purple Line email, along with the business people and politicians. And they stood up and they fought for it. And that's why they got it. But Baltimore doesn't seem to get that. So what are you going to do to get Baltimore to stop doing what it's been doing and start coming to more than just these singular meetings.
Right. So back in 2016, I actually ran for city council in Baltimore. And in 2015, I saw a lot of those meetings being advertised about the link changes and about the various changes to the bus lines that were about to come down the pipe. Now, some of you may not know this, but some of our own, and I'm not just saying this because I'm in the Green Party, I'm saying it because it's true. Some of our candidates for office actually went to the bus lines, like Amanda Maminsky, handed out flyers to the riders, some of them whom were blind. And this was the first time they were hearing about it, even though it was being piped over the speaker. Sometimes the speakers are terrible and they can't hear anything. I also saw some very good politicians, such as Mary Pat Clark and Carl Stokes at the time, advocate for their community. But there was a disconnect because he would come out to the local meetings like in Harwood or Able, and people would get riled up about the bus line changes, but then could not get them to the actual meetings where they could advocate for themselves. So it was always letters full of people's names. It was always them trying to negotiate. So there were routes that were changed. I think there was one that was added to the Green Mountain area. But there were a lot that were lost because people didn't show up. You're exactly right. Now, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. The unions for a long time were fighting this with staff members. And I want to give credit where credit's due for that. But we have so many issues in this city, in this area to fight on. $15 an hour minimum wage came up right behind it. And there's only so many times we can rely on union staffers to take care of our problems for us. So I completely agree with you. We need a new method of activism in this area. We've got to stand up for ourselves. We cannot just sit back and say, okay, we've got a Democratic administration, less crazier than Trump, everything's gonna be okay. If you think that's okay, you got to look at Baltimore City with some brighter eyes, because Baltimore City is not doing okay, and they've had a Democratic administration for years. So it is time that we opened our eyes and did our own advocacy work. I totally agree with you about what happened in Montgomery County, but the difference between Montgomery County and Baltimore City is there are a lot more wealthy people in Montgomery County. Let's just be honest. So we've got to make a bigger stink. That's why I'm glad this meeting is here today in Towson, because I think that we need a regional activist circle to say no to Governor Hogan or Governor whoever. We're not interested in a policy that just helps the voters that you are catering to. We're interested in a policy that helps everyone, because our children and our children's children will not be able to afford the rent no matter how much money they make or no matter what color their skin is.
Okay, we have one more question. For you? Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more that the idea that it's free to take a bus from Roland Park to Federal Hill, but it costs $1.70 for a family to get from West Baltimore to their job and back. So it's indefensible. It's likely a civil rights violation. When you say, however, you're not just advocating for an idea, you're running for governor. When you say you want to have free public transportation in Baltimore City, how would you pay for that?
Yeah, well, I'm realistic because I know about the cost at play. So right now we have to tackle the fare box issue first. There's no other way around this. There have been advocates that are working on this long before I'm there. I'm sure some of them are in this room. That's got to be the first agenda. The next thing we have to do is we've got to look at the pool of money that we have, because Governor Hogan keeps cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back. That's why I'm for like a regional lockbox model. I think that we've got to lock it away. We've got to have a regional commission full of local people that are advocating for it. But then comes the advocacy part on the local level. Because I do think there's enough money to actually make most of the public transportation in Baltimore City free going out to the counties. I really do. But if we're doing mostly appointees in a commission-style lockbox model, this gets very into the weeds, I fear that it's never going to take place. I fear that an administration is going to see the tax revenue increase. They're going to want to encourage people, basically. They're going to fight with the county to get rich people to move into the city. I mean, that's basically what's happening right now. So we've got to fight the way we do advocacy first, and then that's got to be the front and center demand. You don't win a fight by saying, let's start by just asking for a 10-cent fare increase and see if we can advocate for a 15-cent if we get someone in office that really favors us. You got to start by saying, we are in a climate emergency. Other cities around the country, around the world have done this, making fares free. We already have free fares for certain neighborhoods. Why can't we do this here? if you want to join this commission for a Lockbox Regional Transit Authority, you've got to show us the numbers. You've got to show us what we want and how far we can get to it. So that's my model of advocacy right there. 2 seconds soundbite. All right. Well, I'm Ian Schlakman. I'm running for governor. The Reverend Andy Chambers. Please consider us as governor. Thank you so much.